Hello, good morning. This is a topic I've been dying to talk about for such a long time. I'm so into energy. Oh, you're gonna have to excuse me. Speaking of energy, I'm this is my allergy season, so I'm all phlegmy and a little coffee, so excuse me. Um, but I'm all into energetics, energy work. That's a big part. If any of you looked at my um, I posted something, a video from like the other part of my life, which is all about natural healing. I am big into bioenergy and energetics in general. All the different kinds of natural medicine that I do involve energy. Um, and that sounds really weird. It's not like even for me, it still sounds kind of like, ooh, there's energy out there, but as I tell my clients, if you could look at your own body with a powerful enough microscope, you would get past the level of, skin and tissue and bones, like where x-rays look at your bones, you would get past that to where you could see like the actual molecules that you're made of. And you would see that the molecules are made of atoms that clump together. And you would see that atoms are comprised of spinning packets of energy around mostly empty space. And that's what we're made of, you and me. Like that's kind of indisputable. So, yes, it's a miracle how we appear to ourselves and to others to be like a solid being, and if you knock your head on the door frame, it really hurts. But at the same time, it's really true that we are all about energy. Nothing in us happens without energy. Your heart only beats because of the electrical signal being sent to it by your nervous system. And physical pain in your body is actually electrical signals being sent from the painful spot to your brain and back again. So energy is everything. And the same is true when we talk about family dynamics. So I'm going to get into that in just a sec. But the question that I asked yesterday in the group about, post your biggest question about uh, overstepping. Excuse me. There were so many different versions, so many different people had so many different kinds of questions, so many different kinds of situations. Everyone was different from the next. So, my interest is figuring out how to boil this down into something like one thing that everybody can use that's the same, even if everybody's situation is different. That's fun for me. That's the work that I love to do. So, like, how can we all use the same kind of formula in a way that helps us figure out and improve the specifics of our own situation? So the answer to that has to be outside of the specifics of the situation, right? I mean, we can't have an answer that's too close to anybody's specifics or it doesn't apply to everybody else. And in fact, I'm going to go so far as to say that the answer is outside of conventional thinking about how to solve the problem, because conventional thinking always involves, you know, looking at what's in front of us, looking at the situation that we have in front of us, and trying to, apply some kind of thinking that helps us manipulate the building blocks of what we have in front of us. The answer to this problem, if it's going to be an answer that everyone can use, is outside of the regular way of thinking about this problem. I hope that makes sense. I'm so excited about this. I think you can probably tell. So the answer is something more fundamental, more basic than any of the particular problems. And when we get to some kind of a foundation that applies to everyone, then we know that we're on the right track. So that's why I say that the energetics of a situation is when we have a good grasp of the energetics, we're going to be talking about something that applies to everyone. This is why I'm so often talking about, how kids are wired. when I say that kids aren't wired to have two mothers, and I'm not talking about a same sex situation, two moms in the same family, because those are people who cooperate and love each other, right? And the kids can learn to, of course, to adapt perfectly to that. But kids are not wired, no human beings are not wired to have two mothers who, disagree with each other. That's something fundamental. It's energetic. It's in our inner, root level programming. So energy is the fundamental piece of this puzzle. And it really is outside of conventional thinking. We're not used to thinking of being energy as the most fundamental thing. We're used to thinking of it as being, something out here outside of us. That energy is somehow, if you accept it at all, it's sort of something in your environment outside of you. But that's not really true. Um, if we even talk about like Einstein, this is science from 100 years ago already. Okay, like it's not something new. E equals mc squared. Energy is mass moving at the speed of light. They're all the same thing. Energy is the same as physical stuff under different circumstances. Think about for a moment. Okay, this is something that we can all relate to. The moon, which is ostensibly just a rock in orbit around our planet. It's not something magical, but it has an energetic relationship to the earth. And how we know that, and one of the ways that we can see it, is that it pulls the hundreds and thousands, millions of tons of seawater up onto the shore every day. It does that. We know it. It's not a mystery. I mean, it's a mystery, I guess, how it could be possible, but we just accept that it's true. That the gravitational pull of the moon moves the water, all of it, from the ocean up onto the land, and then it goes back again, and then it does it again, and it goes back again. There is no amount of human effort or ingenuity that could accomplish that task. There's no way that if humans wanted to move all the ocean water in a matter of a couple of hours up onto the shore, that we could assemble. I mean, I guess we probably could, but it would be an enormous investment of time and energy and resources. And seemingly, this is accomplished without any effort on a daily basis by the moon. So, when we're resisting in some way coming to an understanding of how energy works in our life, you are committing yourself to a life of tremendous effort, because you can accomplish something in a tiny fraction, with a tiny fraction of the energy. When you're working with energy, you use less of it to solve problems. Okay? So overstepping, which is the title of this little live stream, overstepping is about somehow resisting a kind of natural hierarchy of how our families work, a natural hierarchy of family dynamics. The word dynamics is referring to energy. That's the meaning of the word. And we talk about family dynamics, how people interact with each other, and where are the hierarchies in our family and how do those play out. That is an energetic thing. And so the more we understand that, the more we can understand how that affects how we overstep in our stepmom role. I'm going to just skip over what I was going to say and get to another point here, because I think this is really important to say. If you haven't heard me talk about this before, the step family, the blended family, the modern family is a brand new thing in all the history of humanity. There has never existed this kind of situation before. Never. Okay. If there was one 100 years ago, I haven't heard about it. There were stepmoms, but those were people who, that was a woman who came into your family and married your dad if your mom had died. There was not a mom in another house and you spent half of your time going from one place to another. That has never, ever existed before. So all of our evolutionary behaviors and um, and energetic hierarchy and orders of love and loyalties belong to a system that we're not, that's not the system that we're in. That's not the family that we're participating in now. We are basically recoding humanity, all of humanity right now in this generation, with new root level programming for how to do family in this new way. It is a huge, monumental undertaking that you and I and all of us are involved in doing here. And understanding the energetics of family is going to really help us to do that. So I'm looking, I don't see any comments yet. There might be some. Go ahead and, post your comments and questions, and I'll try to keep on top of them as we go. I have learned about something called the Orders of Love from, I hope you can see this. It's a study of something called family constellations. Family constellation therapy is something that I've been learning about and interested in for about 15 years, and it's completely amazing. Highly, highly recommended. But when you participate in uh, in a workshop of family constellations, you really get to understand quite physically what we're talking about when we talk about energy in family patterns and hierarchy. But they speak about something called orders of love, that we are kind of energetically imprinted with orders, like with a hierarchy of love, who we're connected to, who we have sort of genetic loyalty to. And the order is, in there are different orders, but certainly the order of relationships is very important. So the parents relationship is a stronger one than the relationship of the parent to the child, because the parents are together first as a unit. And of course, in a regular family, that's obvious, right? But in a step family, the parent and child had a relationship before these two parents, these two partners, knew each other. And that changes everything. It doesn't mean that you can't veer it towards the kind of feeling that you want to have in your family, but you have to acknowledge that there is a natural energy at work, um, sort of turning the wheels of this social unit. And if when you know about that, then you can act in a different way in order to move towards your goals. Because of course that's what we're going to do. We're not talking about just sitting back and saying, well, okay, it's never going to be the way I want it because it's just hopeless. Of course not. We're going to be smart because we know what we're working with, in the same way that we don't spend billions of dollars putting up seawalls to keep the tide out everywhere in the world. You observe how the tide works and you plan accordingly in order to do what you want. Get your boat out to sea or bring it back, or what times of day to swim or fish, or where you build your buildings on the seashore. You observe what's happening in nature and understanding the pattern of it, and then you can go about your business in a successful way. So the other thing I want you to remember, because this is really important about overstepping, is to acknowledge that you have loyalties of love to your own parents that are still there. You are involved also in a hierarchy with your own family, and that some part of overstepping involves you bringing your natural lineage and your loyalty to that lineage into the bubble, the surroundings of these children who are not energetically actually part of your lineage. And that's sometimes that helps us to just flip a switch in your head and say, okay, like they actually aren't part of my train of humanity. They're on their own train, and maybe I don't need for them to get the same messages that I got from my parents, or the same values, or the same rules or routines, or whatever it might be. The other piece of orders of love or hierarchy is that older siblings are higher up, I guess that makes sense, than the lower down ones. And you can feel this in your own life. If you have older siblings and younger ones, if you're honest with yourself, you are probably much more conscious of what your older sister thinks of you, how you look, how you dress, who you date, what kind of job you have, how you keep your house. You're more conscious of what your older siblings think about you than you are of what the younger ones think. Or it could be easier for you to let go of a criticism from a younger sibling, but a criticism from an older sibling would kind of sting. So that's what I'm talking about. This energy, it applies in all families. And what they do in family constellation therapy is work out how to fix those problems when it's not going the way it ought to, when something is blocking these normal interactions. They have figured out how to move things around so that everything settles out, and people are happy. So you can't just barge into their circle, into their family circle, into their orders of love and their hierarchies. We have to be clever about how we get ourselves as stepmom into connection with them, because a lot of women spend huge amount of energy trying to figure out what is the way to get myself into that family. I feel like an outsider, right? That's what so many people say. I still feel like an outsider. They're in their thing all together, and I'm sitting over here by myself, and I can't figure out how to get in. So that's another whole issue, but it also involves the energetics. Today we're talking about overstepping, okay? So you can't impose your hierarchy on them, and you can't barge into theirs. They are not wired to require a connection to your lineage. They're wired to require a connection to their own lineage. This is what we see in adults who find out that they're adopted, and it becomes like an obsession to find their birth parents, even though they were raised in a perfectly loving family and everything's gone fine for them, and they totally love their adopted parents and their siblings, and everything's okay, but they become obsessed with finding and meeting and connecting with their biological parents. Like, what is that about? And it happens all the time. It doesn't happen to every single person, but there is a very, very strong inner pull to be surrounded by the people who are behind you energetically, that you're carrying their DNA into the world. Um, so your partner's kids don't have that urge for you. And it's not about you, it's about them. It's how we're wired, it's how we're made inside. Okay. So the act of what we call overstepping, which is when you know that you've crossed some kind of line, and uh, that things start to go badly after that. You get a bad reaction to what you've done, or the attitude of the kids changes to you after what you've done, or somehow you've overstepped and your partner is upset with what you've uh, some act that you've taken on. It can be the biomom who is upset with something, like that you, um, I don't know what, you did a different tooth fairy routine because your stepchild lost their first child or their first tooth at your house, and she's all upset because you did some kind of tooth fairy thing. Or how many at Christmas time, do you know how much I hear about the elf on the fucking shelf? Like, that it's different at the mom's house and she's all upset because the elf doesn't do the right thing at your house or something. Like, seriously? But there are so many ways that we can somehow overstep and do the wrong thing. And in general, it has to do with being too maternal in some energetic way around our kids, around our stepkids, for sure. So it is a natural part of the learning process. Overstepping is unavoidable. It's how you don't know that you've gone too far until you step to the too far place. I often say that it's like there is an invisible concrete curb that's constantly moving in your house and you're forever stubbing your toe on it. You don't know that it's there, and you just you're going to stub your toe from time to time. So we're looking for some kind of steel-toed boots here so that you're not constantly unwittingly actually breaking a toe, right? We can have a more gentle way of learning where the boundaries are in our family. So part of it comes from us in in a very natural way, because when we're around children, nature arranges for us to be activated in our maternal instinct. And you can ask any woman who has ever had a baby what happens after you've had a baby and you are around somebody else's baby who's crying. Your boobs fill up with milk, right? If you're a nursing mom. Um, our maternal instinct gets activated very easily by being around other people's kids. It's part of nature. And we think that we're following nature by acting in a maternal way with those kids. But in this particular instant, it doesn't serve us to do that. It doesn't serve us at all. And if anything, the opposite is true. We have to, um, I'm not going to say resist it, but we have to be conscious of it and understand our our bigger goal and how we are going to rewire these kids so that our new family functions as a healthy functional unit. Part of the problem, so part of it comes from us, part of the problem is generated by the dad. A lot of the comments that I saw yesterday, and of course they're in the group all the time, are about having differences of parenting style and how that can be a conflict. And partly it's a kind of a curiosity about why your partner is operating in a certain way, and how that, like, it's so hard to understand what he's doing, because he's seemingly so together in all the other parts of his life, and when it comes to his kids, there's this weird disconnect where it just doesn't seem functional. Things aren't working properly. He can't see what you can see, and whatever, he seems stuck in some way. And that's also normal because he also has to adapt to this completely new system. And the other thing about orders of love is that old systems have priority over new systems. And doesn't that just suck? Because we're part of the new system. And the old systems have an energetic priority. So that means that dads have to be continuously working on prioritizing the new system, because the unconscious default is to prioritize the old system as much as you don't want to. You think you got divorced from that lady because you didn't want to be married to her anymore. But unconsciously, in many ways, you are still prioritizing that old system, your connection to her and your whole family connection with her and your kids together. Unconsciously, that's floating to the surface all the time. So you have to work at prioritizing your new system. You're not bad or weak or stupid or lazy or anything like that. It's natural that you default to the old system, because that's the way energy works. That's your natural priority. And if you want to prioritize your new family, because, like, nature has no template for this, okay? Like I'm saying, in the last 40 years, it's really not older than 40 years that we have divorces resulting in joint physical custody, where kids go from one house to another. nature has no template for this. So you have to be intentional about prioritizing your new family and figuring out exactly what that means for you and how you're going to do that. So dads are hooked. They're still hooked energetically into the old system without realizing it. And I think being conscious of that fact can already start to excuse me, that can already start to change things for the better and say, ah, there I am again. I need to unhook myself from that. Of course, that's the work that I do with dads, getting them unhooked from their old system and figuring out how to function and how to prioritize this new system so that it works, so that everybody's happy, that so that you get to actually move on and have a healthy and happy and prosperous family 2.0. Okay. The other problem that dads have is that parenting now has become completely upside down and they don't get it. They just don't get it. It's a mystery. And the truth is that dads often sometimes start to feel like another child, like a they start to feel like a child in the sense um, that their children have power over them that they don't understand. And so again, they default to an old system where in a that they recognize of that someone has power over them. That's where you feel like a child. That's a child archetype coming out. We all have these, Jungian psychological archetypes working our consciousness all the time. And so it's easy for dad to be triggered into his child archetype because his own children have some power over him that he doesn't quite understand how to utilize, how to manipulate. And of course, that's become, oh, I would love for my husband to understand that. Yeah. So I hope he can watch this because maybe this will help him to understand that. And the stepdaughter parenting her own dad is similar, but it has a whole specific phenomenon around that. And that also has something to do with the stepdaughter herself, has a part in that. But this child has a power that is unnatural. Okay, like in a regular marriage, the parents come first and the kids come later, and everybody understands that. And the parents can apply whatever kind of parenting they want, whatever kind of crappy parent you could possibly want to be. The kids will never lose their loyalty to you. Okay, I mean, as adults, they might not like you so much, but really, the entire world is filled with therapists who are trying to help people come to grips with with pleasing their parents, which is what they want, with getting approval and love from their parents. You never stop wanting that. So no matter what you do to your kids, they will never stop wanting something from you, which is love and approval. Um, in this situation, the children have the power to trash your marriage and pull you apart. And they do it all the time. That's why the failure rate of second marriages is 60 to 70%. Second marriages with kids fail at a rate of 60 to 70%. And a lot of that is because the kids have the power to say no to your relationship. They can just be so hard on the parent because they have now the support of another household behind them. Like, it's completely unnatural for kids to have that kind of power. They don't actually even like it, but they have it, and they're like it's like lightning. They just discharge this incredible amount of power that is not natural for them to hold inside. So dad needs to know that he's not a shitty dad, but that this new situation requires completely new parenting skills. And he's going to have to learn them because nature has not provided them. Evolution has not provided them in any way. Nothing that he learned from his own dad or his grandfather or his ancestors is going to help him here. Okay. This kind of parenting is counterintuitive. It goes against your your impulses, your reflexes. It's a little bit scary because it's new and because you don't know what other people are going to think about you and because you don't know if it's even going to work. And there's a learning curve. There's a learning curve. And so you're going to do a few, you know, face flops or whatever, belly flops, um, that aren't going to be so nice. But just like happened in the beginning of parenting, where you didn't know what the hell to do when you brought home your first infant, um, you're going to go through that again a little bit. There's all this new parenting shit that you didn't know that you needed to know, but now you know, okay, that you need to parent in a different way in order to congeal the energy of this new family in such a way that it starts to actually work. They say that it takes 7 to 10 years for a step family to fully gel into a unit. 7 to 10 years. I'm not making that up. And a lot of you are going, shit, I'll never last. Like I'm at year 3 and I'm pulling my hair out, or I'm at year 6. Like, seriously, I have 4 more years to go. It doesn't mean that it's going to be bad all the way along, but I can tell you, being 15 years in at this point, that I wouldn't give up what I have now for anything. For anything. What I have now is completely amazing and fulfilling and heartwarming and wonderful. And it was not that even 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, I would have told you that it was great, actually. So, like, it does continue and continue to become better and better and better when you understand how to work with this kind of gigantic force that could move the water of the oceans. When you work with it and acknowledge it instead of ignoring it or even trying to resist it, things become easier and less effortful. So if dad resists learning this kind of new parenting and stays a little bit stuck in not understanding what's going on, there is a vacuum. There's a vacuum in the orders of love. There's a vacuum in the parenting and uh, the natural progression of children through their developmental stages. There's a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. You've probably heard that phrase before, right? So where there's a vacuum, you are the closest thing, and you're going to rush in, you with all your maternal instincts and your urge to fix and your urge to save people and situations and things. That's totally me, right? Like I'm a saver. I want to save everybody. That's the thing that I have to unhook from now in my life. So it's easy for us to step in because, like, okay, he doesn't have this skill, I have it. What's the problem here? Like, this seems really natural. Isn't this what marriage is all about? Like, we complement each other. And he's really good at fixing the car and I'm really good at, I don't know, chopping onions, I don't know what. Like, we both do different things and this is fine. Well, it's not fine where you're talking about his kids because they have this unit together with him that you're not a part of. And there are many, 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 many things that you can't do in place of dad. It's not the ideal solution for you to be the disciplinarian because he doesn't like to do it. It just doesn't work. And I will admit that there could potentially be some kind of situation where somebody says, well, like, this seems to work for us. Like, I do all the discipline. I discipline his kid and my kid and he stays right out of it and everybody's happy. I'll admit that that could be working. And I also would love to hear 10 years down the road whether that's still, like, whether it stayed solid for you and that there wasn't a moment where the child turned 18 or 21 and rebelled in a way that made it really difficult for you. Um, so the kids are now in both systems. The kids belong to the old system and the new system, and they need to be guided in how to balance those because that is a really freaking hard life to have one foot in two boats, especially where they are polarized, especially where there's a lot of conflict and a lot of disagreement about how they should be raised, or disagreement between the parents. It is it is the central struggle of their life to balance those two systems. So that's what we need to focus on helping them do. They are belonging to both systems, and until they become an adult, and that doesn't mean literally at age 18 or 19 or 21. It's like when they are sort of fully grown into their adult sense of agency, they can manage that in different ways, and they can adjust their loyalties in different ways. The other thing I want to say about the dads is that um, the trick of managing the energy for in this kind of situation, okay, where you are trying to draw your kids the um, into the new system, to invite them into the new system with you, is that you need to be magnetic in some way. You need to be attractive to them, and you do that from a place of confidence. You do that by parenting them with confidence, with sureness, with security. Those positive qualities are attractive. Saying yes to everything they want is actually strangely not very attractive. It's weird, right? That's what I mean when I say that it's counterintuitive, because you think that just pleasing them all the time is what is going to attract them into your circle. And that's actually not it, because that's actually not what they want from you. That's they want to feel safe. They want your boundaries. They want to know that you can hold them in their worst moments, and that they are not too much for you, that you are more powerful than they are. That's what they want to know. And that is very attractive. And I'm not talking about saying, starting to say, get to your room because I'm your dad and I said so. Like, it's not that kind of power. It's the inner power, the inner confidence to stand there in the storm that they're throwing at you and not be moved by it, to not uh, to not feel hurt by whatever they can throw at you. We can talk about that in another session. But that kind of security and confidence in yourself and in your relationship to your children, that is magnetic. And that is what's going to keep them in your orbit. While we're talking about planets and energy, that's going to keep them in your orbit, and it's going to keep them in a close orbit with you. Okay, I could go on all day about this actually, but that was long enough. I'm gonna bring it to a close. I invite all your questions and comments for sure. I'll be in both groups answering your questions. Oh, sorry, my stepdaughter is often expressing this is not normal. Michelle is normal, etc. She can strongly feel her environment is not normal for her. She's right. She's absolutely right. It is not normal. Not all kids can articulate that, but it isn't normal. So we have to figure out how to create normalcy. And we don't do it by trying to make our household just like a first family, because it's not. And pretending is not what we're trying to do here. We are trying to build a new system and invite them into it, a new family. Maybe I'll do another session about that, but I've talked before about how to create a new family that the kids are invited to participate in, and not you are not trying to get into their family, and you're not trying to get them to leave their other family. So it's not obvious how to do that, but all of this work, very much would like to hear again how to create that. Yeah, sure, I'll do a session about that. But like, none of this is obvious because it's so new. And I feel like I'm in a very privileged position of having spent like 22 years as a specifically as a homeopath. I was going to just say as a natural health professional, but homeopathy is energy medicine. And that's what I've been studying and practicing in my day job here for 22 years. And I'm privileged to have come into contact with family constellations about 15 years ago. And I'm privileged to be in a step family and to have my own daughter. I had a traditional first family and I got divorced and I'm in a step family and I've done long distance parenting and we've had extreme high conflict and we've had, you know, mental health issues and we've had long distance parenting and I've been a full-time permanent stepmom. I'm in a very privileged position to be able to put a lot of different things together, um, and to, as I said, to create one thing that everybody can use in their own way. That's my jam. That's what I love to do. So clearly, some situations are more, easier or more difficult than others, and it depends on all the parts that are floating around. It depends on your personality and your partner's personality and the kids and their ages and their genders and how how much conflict there is with the other household or how much you get along. Some situations are relatively easy. Some are crazy difficult and even impossible. Um, but the same rules have to apply to all of us, and they do. So the thing is that some people need more help to implement these laws, these rules in their family, around discipline and consequences, around controlling the narrative that comes from biomom. Sometimes that's like a huge, all consuming piece that seems to never end. And sometimes it's not such a big deal. Some people need help to work the court system in a better way to get better outcomes. Some people need help to hang on to their financial resources because God, right? Like this can just like drain the bank accounts in the worst way. Do the dynamics have to change every time there's a big change, even after years of one system working? Well, the dynamics change because the kids get older, and it's just natural that dynamics change in every family when the kids get older. I have a very different relationship with my parents now than I did even 20 years ago, certainly than I did, 40 years ago. And like, talk to anyone who has teenagers. Of course, the family dynamics change from when they're toddlers or when they're middle schoolers or whatever. So, yes, it changes. It's going to change again when the stepkids get married and have their own kids. Um, because there will be issues of, now they're going to be a parent and now they have potentially four sets of grandparents to deal with. It's totally going to change. And now there are grandmas who are doing things differently. Like heck, it never stops. But if we're always aware of the energy and the energetics of the situation are what we are working with. That's the raw material that we're working with here to make change, to to make change so that we're moving closer to our own goals, right? We want to always have our actual goals in front of us and our most important values guiding those goals. And that's not like I'm throwing that in at the end. Like that's a really, really fundamental piece of getting where we're trying to get. So anyway, um, if you think that your situation is one that requires help to implement these kind of ideas to move you forward, hit me up for a call. I would love to talk to you about this. I would love it. I have a little, here you go. Like that's the link straight to my calendar. You can just book a free call with me and we can talk more about this. Okay. I do have a very comprehensive program for dads. It is a 6-month intensive program about learning parenting, learning how to manage the biomom, uh, protecting yourself in court, creating creating a tool. I have a tool that creates a protection for you against having your custody reduced or removed, and talking about long term protecting your finances, because I think a lot of people are unaware how to create agreements around what your obligations are going to be down the road for your kids. So if that's of interest to you, give me a call. Stepmom coaching anytime, give me a call. And thanks for listening. And I'll be back here again next week.